The Path to Authenticity is brought to you by GIA Miami. Founded by world-class mental health experts, GIA provides advanced care for difficult-to-treat conditions, including anxiety, medication-resistant depression, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Using state-of-the-art methods, GIA can help people recover from conditions when more traditional approaches can't. Dr. Antonello Bonci has assembled an expert team serving international clientele in a modern and resplendent Miami setting. If you or someone you love is suffering from depression, anxiety, OCD, or other mental health concerns, call GIA at 833-713-0828. You can learn more about GIA by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting giamiami.com.
Thank you for listening to The Path to Authenticity. My name's Tom Gentry. I think of this show as the opposite of small talk. You'll hear real conversations with real people who know who they are. We talk about what makes them who they are, how they became who they are, and how we might become truer expressions of who we are.
I'm Jill Lang, and this is The Path to Authenticity.
If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If not, thanks for coming back. I'm Tom Gentry, and this is The Path to Authenticity. Episode 178, featuring a conversation with Jill Lang, also known as Coach Jilly. And in this one, we talk about sex. Just kind of take a deep dive into some of our beliefs about it. Talk about our thoughts on why people struggle with it. So this episode was recorded on Clubhouse. And what I'm going to do is break it up into a couple different segments. So the main conversation that I had with Coach Jilly will be the podcast episode itself. And then on the end, I'm going to include the remainder of that room where most notably Dr. Dina Sadek came up on stage and participated in the conversation. She's someone who's going to be a guest in the next couple weeks. Recorded an episode with her. So anyway, this one's a little bit of a variation for the show, but it was fun, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So here you go, Coach Jilly. You and I talked, I don't know, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago now. And you do this thing with your audience on Instagram, Sex on Saturdays. And you were, it was earlier in the week, and you were like putting out feelers for topics. And I had ideas about that.
Thank you.
And we ended
very
up,
helpful.
Yeah. And we ended up, I think I sent you a voice memo or something. I know we talked on the phone at one point, and one of the things that you said is, well, that's something great to talk about, but I don't know how well it'll work on Instagram stories with limited characters and all that.
Correct.
And if I remember right, it was about this belief that we have in our society that if a man doesn't have sex, that he's gonna like go crazy. Or like in order to be normal, a man has to have sex, right?
Yes.
Which isn't real.
Well, it isn't biologically accurate.
Right.
So there's entire movements around the benefits of a man not ejaculating,
Right.
of even having sex and not ejaculating. So there's a whole, so none of that's true. And, and I get that there's a certain level of physical discomfort that happens if you engage with someone sexually as a man and don't ejaculate, thus the term blue balls.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is a man's body will just reabsorb what it has created. And that is ultimately just energy that can be released in other ways. That's why teenage boys have wet dreams, because there's a release, and we're talking about biological stuff. There's a release that happens. If you need to, you're not going to die, you're not going to burst, you're not going to explode. And if you are mindful that pent up energy, sexual energy because sexual energy is ultimately just creative energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy, if you understand energetics and biology, can be shifted to, to turn into things like ambition and creative ideas and motivation and things like that. Now, if you're not mindful, then it may just be distraction. It may just feel like something is taking control of you, but, then we could go off on a tangent about mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that.
It's not real biologically, but we treat it as if it's real and have all these beliefs around it that we act as though are true, right?
Correct.
Which benefits men, right? And that, women feel, it's like we were talking a little bit ago about how women from generations, like one generation before me, what they're taught about how to be for a man. Mm-hmm. Like one of them that I think is safe to say, I know at least one of my sisters picked up on, because she talked to me about it, that this belief that when your husband wants to have sex, it's your job to have sex with him, right?
It is your duty. It
is your spousal duty to just go ahead and do that. And, man, that is, not the world that I grew up in, and that my, the unfolding of my sex life didn't I guess, I've had some partners who believe that,
mm-hmm.
but, most of them, there's a lot more autonomy involved.
Yes.
And I didn't grow up with that belief that I was entitled to that from a partner. For me, it was always a lot more about an agreement,
Yeah. Well, and that's why you are who you are, and, how you've arrived to this place in life. I mean, that's been your path to authenticity.
Yeah.
But, one of I have, I can speak on both sides of that fence. I was married for 22 years, and I was raised, obviously very conservatively and Christian, and which brought with it all kinds of strange, incorrect messages. And yet I can tell you it is very frustrating to me to speak to men whose wives withhold or aren't in the mood or don't take care of themselves in such a way that they are not interested or up to, being sexual. It's so important in any relationship, especially a marriage relationship, any committed relationship. I think it's huge. I think it's so important. I wasn't taught that. I had to figure that out. And I think I may have figured that out too late. in my own marriage. And it is not an entitlement of a man, nor is it the duty of the woman. It is, however, frustrating to me when I hear married men say, she just won't have sex with me. That's unfair. That's unfair. It is a woman's duty to know herself, to know her body, to understand her birthright to pleasure, and to continue down that path for herself first, and then for her relationship, because sex creates such connection in a relationship. If you remove it from the relationship, then what is it? It's just, it's mere friendship. If that.
Right.
If that. Because most of us got together from that chemistry, from that sexual connection. It's just how we connect with people initially. We look at them or we smell them and we're like, oh, I'm attracted to this person. So I think it's really, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course.
Are we swearing? Okay. So I just think it's really shitty when people have these, wild, passionate connections on the onset, and then both people don't do whatever it takes to remain connected. That's frustrating for me to hear for both people. And yet on the flip side, when I was married, my husband would become angry if I was not in the mood. And, to the point where there was, temper tantrums and slamming doors and leaving the bed and just ridiculous things. And so I've been on both sides of that coin. And it's, where he wasn't doing his job was creating an environment that
was inviting for you.
That was inviting, that felt safe, that felt emotionally, because women need that in order to open. So, both sides have a great deal of responsibility in that scenario.
Well, and I think, in my experience, if it's absent, it's an indication that there's something else going on.
Yes.
There's something else that's absent. And also, being a divorced man, in my marriage, one of the things I experienced was the opposite form of entitlement, where, how do I say this? I was treated as though there was something wrong with me if I didn't want to have sex with my ex-wife on the spot, like whenever she wanted it. And, and for me, like, I have a high sex drive. Like, I love having sex, right? Like, ideally, I spend the rest of my life having it every single day. I would love that, but,
Amen.
but,
Amen, brother.
But when, and for me, this is what it was about. If you treat me like garbage all day long, and then you show up in the bedroom at 11 o'clock expecting me to fuck you, you're missing something. I'm not going to be in the mood. And it's not because I have a deficiency in testosterone.
No, absolutely.
It's because you treat me like shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's basically what I just said. And you said it from the male perspective. It's not any different. It really, those things aren't mutually exclusive, and connection, shows up in all kinds of opportunities.
Well, and where this sort of rift started for me is, you talked about the intensity when you first become sexual as a couple, and, It's intense in the beginning, but then, that's what I call the honeymoon period. And then, if you're going to maintain as a couple, then you adapt.
Yes.
You move on from that and you survive that. And so how that all started for me was, I definitely want to do it, but I'm also reading this book, and I want to also, I want to have a fulfilling sex life and also read too. I want to have time to do other things and have a full life. I'm not saying I don't want to. I'm saying, I need to, reach a, normalcy with this where, I can be the fullest expression of myself and still. And that wasn't okay. It was treated as you're rejecting me, which wasn't at all what was happening. And I was vilified for that. You're rejecting me. And, it was a whole, man, it was painful.
It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
And so that is why I think what you explained and what I expressed is one of several reasons why I chose to do this little Instagram story and Saturday installment. And I did it, first of all, because it felt scary for me to talk about sex openly and publicly. Felt terrifying because, of my upbringing, my conditioning, and being a woman and being potentially, judged or viewed as
slut shamed.
You talk openly about sex, you must be a whore, you must be loose, you must be right. All of the stigmas that are attached with, if a woman loves sex, if she openly talks about sex or sexual things, she must be XYZ, fill in the blank. And that was another issue. But my goal in doing it was to remove the stigmas, to remove the judgments, to remove the fears, to normalize talking about sex and sexual topics and the things that I wish someone had talked to me about this stuff way earlier in life. And so that I would have been more comfortable with myself and with my sexuality and expressing that. I really was made to believe that I didn't like sex, and because of the setup in my marriage, because of the relational dynamic in my marriage. And the truth is, after I got divorced, I was like, oh my God, that's really not true at all.
Right.
I just didn't feel like I was in a safe space to explore and to talk about it and to be in my body and feel it. I just didn't feel safe to do that. And that's what I want to create in these conversation and these little, and it seems a bit ridiculous, but it's just a point of entry, these little 15-second clips where I get to, learn things from my followers and talk about things that nobody ever talked to me about. And I thought, man, even if just this little, Saturday installment, you can flip through a few Instagram tiles and realize you're normal, or this is normal, or it's all normal. Let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
And if there had been a safe space in your marriage to talk about it, what was going on between the two of you in a way that was mature and open and curious, chances are you would have had a very, thriving connection. And same goes in my scenario. If I was with someone who really was tuned into creating emotional safety for me and understanding the importance of that, we probably would have had a quite I'm trying to think of the word, just a robust robust sex life.
Yeah.
No, being who I am now, because that's obviously who I am. I just never had really the space to evolve into it in the situation that I was in the past.
Well, it just it reinforces the importance of the foundation of a relationship prior to being sexual, and also the importance of communication and emotional literacy, because ideally we have a conversation where, listen, it's not that I don't want to be sexual with you. It's that I don't want to be sexual with you right this minute because I love this too. And I want to be able to also do this. So this isn't about me not wanting you. I want you. I need to also do this to nourish my relationship with myself.
Yep.
But that requires that I'm stable enough and understand myself well enough to be able to say it. And it also requires that the recipient of that message be emotionally mature enough to receive it and not take it personally. And to be able to engage in that conversation and sort of negotiate through the scenario of what's going to work for both of us. Where do we go with this? And then the ability to do that and work together in that way actually deepens the intimacy and improves the quality of the sexual experience.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Which goes back to when we first hopped in on the interview together, we were talking about editing, and I said, oh, well, my son could edit a podcast for me. And you're like, oh, I don't know if I'd want my kid hearing me talk about sex. This is why I want my kids hearing me talk about sex. I want them to talk about sex. I want them to normalize it and it not be weird or stick, right? Because then at ages 19 and 22, I'm setting them up for more success in their relationships going forward in all the aspects of their relationships. So if they're mature enough to talk about sex with their potential partners or current partners, then this is why we're having this conversation, because everybody's scared to talk about it. I'll never forget. Years ago, I homeschooled my kids from kindergarten up through the 8th grade. And I remember when they were, I want to say they were about 5 and 8 years old. And I was sitting with some other homeschooling moms, and someone had brought up sex, or I had just purchased a set of books on how to talk to your kids about sex. And every mother in that gathering was mortified. And they were like, well, yeah, I'm not going to talk to my kid about sex until they ask about it. And I'm like, oh, so if they never ask, you're never going to bring it up? We homeschool our children. Are we waiting for the world to educate them? And these books were very age appropriate. There was a book for ages 4 through 7, and then 8 through 12, and then 12 through 15. And so it presented the topic in a very just age appropriate way. And we talked, and I sat and I just read that. And I'm like, I don't even have to talk to them about sex. I just read the books with them. But there were, here were these grown women who were in charge of their children's education, who were terrified and mortified to speak to their children about sex. And I was like, I want my kids to have the correct version. I don't want them learning on the playground that if you kiss a boy, you're going to get pregnant. Or that, that oral sex is not really sex. You know, these are the most ridiculous things,
Right.
but kids talk about this kind of stuff. And so what if we started earlier on creating some sexual literacy within our children so that they grow up and have other adult conversations with people they're going to engage sexually with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the reluctance to talk about it is ultimately about our own discomfort.
Of course.
You know, which is rooted in the shame around it, you know, which just speaks to culturally our relationship with sex and sort of the Victorian nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really repressed.
I would love to change that.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing your part, aren't you?
I would like to think so. Yes.
So as we speak, it's Saturday. So what's your topic this week?
I did a poll last week. So logistically, here's the challenge. Instagram only allows so many characters. Like, so if I post a question tile, you know, hey, tell me about your favorite color. Well, you know, if you type the word blue in the box, it's going to take it. But if you just said, well, when I grew up, it was magenta and then it was purple. And then you can't say a lot in the little box. The box only receives so many characters. So when considering the topic, I have to also consider, can someone articulate a response in the limited number of characters that the box allows? So I posted some topics last week, and the topic that received the most votes was to discuss sex drive and frequency. So this week's topic is that's the topic, and I have just asked that people share their questions, their thoughts on the topic. And so I've already received some really great comments that I'm looking forward to sharing with everyone.
So
as I log into Instagram and look.
Yeah. So what is it you're trying to get at with that topic?
The normalcy of everyone's experience. In life, in sex, in relationship, the truth is you are having the right experience. I think at the core, we all believe there's something wrong with us, or that we're doing it wrong, or that we're flawed, or, you know, the human experience is one of doubt or lack of worthiness. And ultimately, it's important that everyone know that whatever their experience now is, that they're not alone. Mm-hmm. We're just, as humans, we're just not so different.
Well, shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about pornography.
Let's talk about it.
I have a very good friend who, you know, I'm an addiction counselor, and I've worked in that world for many, many years. And I have a friend who I've been doing this podcast with. He is the operations director at a facility where they do a 2-week intensive for men with intimacy disorders. That's how they describe it. So sex addiction, love addiction, pornography addiction, which if you ask him, he would say, like all addiction, it's really dopamine addiction.
Yeah.
But a conversation that you and I have had. So, I mean, I know it can be problematic. And I try not to have like a value judgment about whether it's okay or not in general. And I think it's like anything else, like, we were talking about moderation at the beginning of our conversation. I think if you're emotionally grounded and healthy and you partake of just about anything in a healthy way, it doesn't have to be inherently problematic. But if you're if you have this void that you're trying to fill and you're trying to use pornography to fill it, then that's a problem. And also, if it impairs your ability to connect with human beings, that's a problem. But, it's so interesting to me what has happened with pornography over the last, since the advent of the internet.
Yeah.
Because, and we've talked about this, when I was a kid, when I was in high school, and as a little kid, it was either Playboy or, man, if you were at somebody's house whose dad was really kinky, maybe Penthouse or Hustler.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And then you had to know where they were hidden.
Mm-hmm. And you had to sneak. And,
Absolutely.
and it was a lot of risk of getting in trouble to be a kid. And then, there were adult bookstores where people would go and watch movies for a quarter. And you didn't want to be seen going in and out of those.
Oh, no.
And then later on, when VCRs became a thing and you go to video stores and they'd have a private room where there'd be some pornography. And when I was in high school, it would be the thing where 3 or 4 guys in somebody's living room whose mom worked late and somebody was keeping lookout to make sure she wasn't pulling in the driveway. It was, it took so much effort and it was so much more taboo than it is now, which I think it still is in a different way. But now it's just so immediate, It's
not only hyper accessible. I remember, and I think you and I discussed this, when my son was, whenever it was that we allowed him to have a cell phone and get on social media, it might have been, I don't know, 13, 14 years old, something like that. I would monitor. I was able to log into his account and I would monitor what was happening. And you don't even have to go looking for porn. It will come find you. Especially as a teenage boy, it is very common to have Instagram models, porn hustlers, hit your DMs.
Mm-hmm.
And send their pic, to try to get you to come and look at their accounts. So you don't even have to go look for it. It will find you. I have those people hit my DMs. As long as you're on the internet, people are going to send you raunch. You don't even have to look for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the relationship to age or generation, we've talked about too. It's really interesting. And, I mentioned to you at one point in my dating life, I can tell if someone is into porn, whether we ever talk about it or not, just based on the behavior, the way they are in bed. Right. It's pretty apparent. And, one of the things that's particularly shocking to me is how prone younger women are to sending nudes. And, you hear a lot of stuff about guys doing it, unsolicited dick pics and also asking for them. But, it happens. I've had women send me pictures that, I've never once asked someone to do that,
Never once?
Well, not until there was a relationship established and that's where we went with it. Yeah. But no, not we're just getting to know each other. Oh, by the way, Jill, could you send me a naked picture of yourself just so I know who I'm talking to here? No, but I have been sitting in a meeting and looked down at my phone and I've felt really grateful that I didn't have it sitting on top of the table at the time.
Yikes.
You know? Yeah. I mean, it's, which I'm sure, you know, we're in the same ballpark age wise. And, the thought of a woman my age or a girl in high school, like, I mean, if anybody had a naked picture of somebody, like that was really fringe. Nobody did that.
Yeah. Well, because pictures were printed.
Well, that too.
The person at the photo mat saw your naked.
Right.
First.
Nobody was carrying around a high quality camera in their pocket that, you know, produced images immediately.
Right.
Yeah. So, that's definitely a difference, but now it's just, not as big a deal. It's just not a big deal to a lot of people.
No,
it's just part of how they court each other, which is blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, it leaves very little to the imagination. That is for sure. Yeah, it's just the age we live in with the cell phones. The information is so easily passed back and forth. It just, yeah.
Yeah.
But to the topic of porn, I have very, you know, definitive feelings about it myself. My ex-husband was a porn addict, was a sex addict. And, that obviously proved to be very destructive in our, connection in our relationship. And so I don't see a lot of value in it. I think that if you're with someone who is into it like you are, then by all means, have fun. But like you said, I think that when it is a replacement or a medication, if you're doing it to check out, if you're, if it's a compulsion, if it's something you cannot control, if you're wasting your time when you could be doing something, you could be connecting with a real human being.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if it keeps you from being able to orgasm when you're with a human,
mm-hmm.
I think that's an issue.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
It happens a lot. And that's typically how you can tell if a man watches a lot of porn. If you're with him and he cannot climax. It's a very telltale sign of it. I think it's destructive for young men and young women because, from the point of view that porn is let's say unethical porn,
mm-hmm.
meaning the porn that is, with the fake boobies and the bleached buttholes and the extra large, penises. And it's like,
or someone is victimized. That's what I think of when
someone is victimized, but it's not real.
Right.
It's not real. And I think the problem there, among other problems, is that our young people are, this is being shown as like, oh, well, if you're good at sex, this is what it looks like,
mm-hmm.
or this is what you should look like,
mm-hmm.
or this is what it should. And it's just none of that is true.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and again, if no one's talking to you about it, if you don't have someone guiding your path to say, like, this is not real, and this is not what true human connection is really like,
mm-hmm.
then it's destructive. It really is destructive. And I do appreciate that there are women making porn now. It's called,
mm-hmm.
Ethical porn. There are women who have real couples come in with real bodies and who are having real experiences and are willing to be filmed while doing it. And I'm not here to judge anyone's turn on.
Right.
It's the, like you said, it's the dopamine. It's when you become addicted. It's when you are checking out. It's when you are replacing real human contact with virtual. Which can be likened to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I chuckled a little bit listening to you. I was thinking about a friend of mine who, a woman who's close to my age, and she was talking about, having a hard time dating younger guys because, like, dude, I'm not a porn star. Like,
yeah,
like the expectations of the younger guys, it just, it's overwhelming to her.
Yeah.
But going back to what you were saying, one of the things, and I feel like if you're a couple and you're both into it and we're going to do this together to enhance the quality of the experience, that is fantastic. You know, I mean, if that's what you want, want, and you're both on board and nobody's hiding anything from the other, it deepens the connection. You know, and you know, I come from a place that, you know, I'm not going to pretend I've never partaken, but what I can tell you is I don't feel good about myself when I do.
Yeah. There's a lot of shame attached to it.
And I try not to do that. But I think for guys, especially, it's so far removed from reality. And it's so easy to obtain that satisfaction and that level of excitement where if this pornography didn't exist, in order for you to achieve that, it would take a lot of work. It would take you actually having a deep, intimate connection with another human being, which this all circumvents and just gets you straight to the intensity that, you know, couples who've been sexual together in a healthy way for decades might have never, ever turned each other on that much. You know what I mean? It's so intense and immediate. And exactly
so
what flavor you want. Yeah. Laziness too. Yeah.
You know, because it's like, oh, well, I don't have to, that's not something we're building up to. That's not something we're, you know, that's not how the relationship's going to progress. And it's like, instead, like, oh, well, this girl's doing it on the screen,
right?
And why aren't you doing it?
Right. And I've also I've met young people who, yeah, I'm a virgin, but you know, it's like, it doesn't bother them the way it would have me at that age because, you know, they've had these other experiences that they don't feel like they've been deprived of as much, or they've missed out as much because, you know, they've had virtual sex for years, you know?
Yeah.
It's really, so where do you think this, so I feel like, you know, the repression that we talked about, and then now like the hyper availability of pornography and to some degree, in some ways, all the rules being cast aside, where's the gray area? Where are we gonna, when the pendulum stops swinging so far back and forth, where are we gonna arrive? Where's the balance, do you think?
Wow. I don't know. I think my greatest fear is that we're going to land somewhere where there's such an incredible disconnection between human beings. That's, you know, that's what it looks like with all this virtual this and AI that, and everyone's on an app, and, you know, and then we experience COVID and people stay in their houses and it's like no one connecting. It's like, it seems as though fewer people are connecting, but which is why I talk about what I talk about. It's why I, do the show and create the and ask for the feedback in the hopes that we'll get out and connect on a human level more often.
Mm-hmm.
And and that the knowledge becomes power, and that the application of the knowledge becomes power. But, we have to ultimately, I don't know. I'm really scared for that, Tom. Where is the pendulum going to land? I have to work within my realm of influence. And for me, that's my Instagram account, and it's my kids, and it's my friends.
Maybe a podcast at some point.
And maybe a podcast at some point. Yeah, I have to work within. It's just like anything else, is the war real? Yeah. Did COVID happen? Yeah. But what is it within my power to control? And that is what is within my power to control is my, my direct realm or sphere of influence, which is, you and I having these conversations.
And as trite as it might sound, the whole let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. I mean, it really all begins with ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then we influence other people, whether we're trying to or not. And I think what has persisted and what will continue to persist is our deep longing for meaningful connection. And it's just a matter of, are we mindful of that or not? Mm-hmm. Are we willing to satisfy that in a positive way or not? And this is one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast, because I mean, these conversations, this is really satisfying to me, to have conversations like this. And I feel like people listen to it because it's satisfying for them. Mm-hmm. And, you and I have never met in person. This is the second time you've been on the podcast, and we've had a few phone conversations and some social media interactions aside from that. But there's an undeniable depth to the relationship that we have.
Absolutely.
And I think we're all longing for that, whether we realize it or not.
100%. And I hope that these conversations, between you and your audience, I'm doing air quotes, audience, and me and my audience, I hope that we just bring more awareness to all of it.
Yeah.
And just the importance of human connection. There's, even just these, picking up the phone or being on a FaceTime or a podcast interview. I mean, texting's great. I love texting. It's efficient. It's concise. Sometimes it can be misunderstood, but you can be doing 4 other things and having a text conversation at the same time, which is great. And Snapchat and all that has its place. But there's a beautiful energy that is that travels through the airwaves in our voices at the very least. And so, because you're in one state and I'm in another, I love that we can connect in this way. And I think that's probably what I love, what I do enjoy about Clubhouse is, or video interactions on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, is just that if you can see someone's face and hear their voice, or either or, it just so much more energy is exchanged in that way versus just typing out words on a screen.
Yeah, the texting thing, I see the value in it too, but I've met an awful lot of people who, it's a tool for them to feign connection.
Yeah.
and is an obstacle to real connection.
Yes.
There's a superficiality to it.
Absolutely. You can hide.
Yeah.
You can hide behind it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like when I'm dating, I like to try to meet with people as sooner versus later, because what are we doing if we're not meeting in person?
Yeah. Or, for me, it's like to meet women who actually want to speak to each other. Like it's a big deal for like somebody to get on the phone. Which is just baffling to me.
Yeah, it seems that way on this end too.
Yeah, it's so strange, and to me, it's just avoidance. It's avoidance. And then I guess it also speaks to the convenience factor that we were talking about with the pornography thing. Like you can just, if you don't have to put any effort into it, why would you? I think that's how a lot of people function. So
it's a shame.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Jill.
I have time. Does anybody have anything they'd like to?
There's Dr. Dina. Hey, how are you?
Hey, Tom. Oh my God, what an amazing conversation. I just caught the last bit of it. Hey, Jill.
Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Dr. Dina and I have had some of these conversations too, Jill.
Love it.
Tom, was that a quote that you said, the longing for meaningful conversations or meaningful connection? Is that a quote? Because I've heard it exactly like that. Or maybe you've said it before.
Well, I'm not plagiarizing anyone. So let's say it is a quote, but it's attributed to me. How about that? I'll have to go back and listen to exactly what I said, and maybe I'll do something.
I do have a question for Jill and even to you, Tom, which is that, do you think that a part of it is an illusion? Because sometimes deeply in the soul and the core level, we are longing for the most meaningful connections, which hits home, to say the least. But sometimes that is fleeting, because do you think that with these online connections, that the fact that the possibility of us never meeting in person adds to the mystery of it, adds to the beauty of it?
Absolutely.
So that's my question.
I love that question. And I think the short answer is yes. I think that, like Tom was talking about dopamine addiction, there is, when your phone pings or your dating app comes up, or when someone sends you a message or a picture or a wink or whatever, there's something that happens in your brain and you're like, oh, someone, it's what we don't get when we don't go out in public and a woman and a man, or a man and a man, or whatever, it make eye contact. That's what's missing. And so if you've got, if it feels good for one person to watch you walk across a room while locking eyes with you, imagine what it feels like to have 5 people do that, online dating, or people sliding into your DM or sending you pictures or Snapchats or what, all it is a constant. I mean, how many times have you reached for your phone when it didn't even ping? You're like, is someone messaging me? It's absolutely, we're addicted to it. And the illusion, like you said, or the fantasy of it. I made a post a while back about being a fantasy dater. And it was like, are you a fantasy dater? Like, do you really attach a meaning to someone that you've never even met just because they're tall or they're handsome, or you like that their hobbies are like your hobbies, and you start going like, oh, I wonder if maybe he and I'll, or if we'll go here or do that, it would be fun to go on vacation, right? We start creating these stories in our mind, and it's somewhat of a diversion from presence, from ourselves. But it also is, what you said, like, this seems like it could be really great, even though it's not real. It's like none of it's real.
Well,
but it does still give you a hit, right? It gives you a hit of dopamine, or adrenaline, the most addictive substance on the face of the earth. It's like, oh, maybe. And then when that maybe runs out, then you just squirrel. In other words, oh wait, there's a maybe over there. There's a maybe over there, right? We're intrigued by the mystery. And then if you factor in the absolute tragedy that most of us are attracted to unavailability in some form, whether it be geographical unavailability, emotional unavailability, physical unavailability, whatever, that for some reason, and that goes back to the whole psychology of our caregivers. If that's attractive to you, then just add that into the recipe of why all of this is so alluring.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the unavailability factor, because, for me, a lot of the work that I've done on myself has come as a result of issues in relationships. And until I really started to get through some of the healing, I kept engaging in this pattern of choosing people who were unavailable in different ways.
Yeah.
And most of the time it boiled down to emotional unavailability.
Yep.
But it often came about as a geographic unavailability.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, before I healed that stuff to the degree that I have now, gotten consumed with relationships with unavailable people that were destined to fail. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things speaking of moderation, have had to learn to do is, okay, so here's this person who I feel a deep connection with, who is on the opposite side of the globe, and I may never meet in person. Mm. How do I engage in that in a way that's healthy, and also love myself enough to protect myself in case the other person isn't really willing to reciprocate or show up or make this distance a temporary thing or whatever it is, because ultimately we can only trust ourselves, right? We can only take other people at their word and witness their behavior, right? And I've made the mistake of trusting people too soon and ignoring the red flags and taking them at their word when they haven't really earned that. It's a whole other aspect of choosing unavailable people. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with all that, but that's one of the things that comes to mind for me with all this. I think, the illusion there, it affords us an opportunity to have the illusion of a meaningful relationship at times when deep down, maybe we're too scared to have the actual real thing. And so ultimately it's just a distraction.
Yeah.
From that,
Or being unwilling to be alone until something more viable presents.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guilty of that.
Yeah. Yeah. How was that, Dr. Dina?
Sorry, I was running to the phone. I find it interesting, Tom and Jill, because Tom and Jill, that is very cool. Kristen is here as well. So I find it very interesting because you guys are probably seated in the US right now. So for me, seated in South Asia, coming from a very Eastern background, I see it a little different because we see it all the time over here when with the arranged marriage system, somebody who is living in the West or wherever would be introduced to somebody who is back at home. And then within weeks and months, they would meet, they would get engaged, and things would move really fast. So for an Eastern woman sitting in South Asia, it's a little different because if you connect with somebody online and things are amazing, there's this synergism every single time you speak. Usually it's the woman who would expect the man to take the initiative to want to meet or just at least bring that up in conversation. So what do you all think about the cultural aspect of this whole possibility of two people across the world who connect? And since it's 2022, it's not like we don't have flights today. Agenda aside, what do you think about that? What is holding us back from actually wanting to meet that person in person, even if it means, yes, financial limitations might be there, we can work towards making that happen in real.
Well, what is preventing that from happening is, I mean, in Western culture, I've had a hard time having some guy that lives 20 minutes away want to make a date and meet with me. I'm personally very invested and embodied in masculine and feminine energy, and that translates across gender and whatever. But as a woman, I am primarily feminine in my leading energy, and I am seeking a man who is his leading energy is masculine. And so to that end, I love when a man takes the lead, makes a plan, expresses interest, is pursuant. I think those things are innately masculine in nature. And if a man is not coming towards me in his expression of interest, then I typically will just match his energy. It doesn't feel comfortable for me to remain in it. I don't feel embodied. I don't feel feminine if I am pursuing connection. I don't feel like those are feminine qualities. So what may hinder a meeting for me, whether someone is up the street or across the globe, the only thing hindering a meeting for me, no matter where anyone is the pursuit of the masculine. That's the only thing that presents as an issue for me. I will get on an airplane. I have the means, I have the time, I have the flexibility. I will do that if there is genuine connection. But the same thing hinders someone from meeting across the globe as it does down the street. It's a lack of pursuit or interest. There's just, people are just inundated with options that oftentimes they don't stick with something long enough to see if it's real, or they don't give enough time and attention to it to cultivate something real. What are your thoughts, Tom?
Well, I think if a guy, is interested enough, then, he's going to initiate.
Yes.
And I also think that it's pretty easy for a guy to engage in everything but the actual let's connect, let's put this into motion repeatedly, mm-hmm. and use that sort of as a way to convince himself he's in relationships when really what he's doing is avoiding one person and then avoiding another person and avoiding another, and really just avoiding himself all along. Because I think I know I know for me, one of the things I've learned through a lot of years of therapy and working through all this stuff is that ultimately in relationships, whether I have quote unquote been hurt or not, I mean, ultimately, on some level, I kind of hurt myself. You know, I made the decisions that opened the doors to all that. And I think there's a general fear among a lot of people, a lot of guys, of making a decision and being, taking responsibility for it. And I think what it requires is, you know, damn the torpedoes. I'm going to fly across the globe and meet Dr. Dina. And if it doesn't happen, at least I tried.
Yeah.
And
you had a great adventure. You had a great experience.
Right. But people are so afraid of being hurt and so deficient of trust in themselves.
Yeah.
I think
well,
that's
because
part
love
of it.
doesn't hurt people. People hurt people.
Right.
You know, love is love. And love is always worth it, in my opinion. But it's true. I mean, if your heart's been ripped out,
well,
on
and
one or more occasions, you may be a little trepidatious.
Yeah, but this gets me to like our whole idea of love and what love is and how relationships are supposed to look and how they're supposed to unfold and all that. There's so much fantasy around it. There's so much fairy tale, you know. Let's live the fairy tale when
thank you, Disney.
Yeah, and what I have learned and where I'm at in my life is loving you means wanting what's best for you, whether that includes me or not.
Yeah.
And so if we love each other enough to take a crack at this, then let's do it and also be able to communicate clearly enough, trust each other enough to say, you know what, Jill, I'm having doubts right now about us. And to have a real conversation about that. And then if we decide that, okay, you know, we've done everything we can, maybe it's time for us to try something different. And for me to, if that's you, because you've decided you wanted something different, to love you enough to support you in that. But it all requires the absence of ego.
So true. Got to be willing to take a risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can relate to everything both of you just said. I think it was yesterday, Tom, that I read that if you're coming from a spiritual, holistic place of genuinely wanting a deep connection that could last, it's not only wanting what's best for the other person, but there's another side to that story. It's about two individuals in the relationship wanting what's best for both.
Right.
So we have to be willing to love the person enough to want what's best for them, but we can only pour from a cup that's full. So do we also want what's best for us? And it's kind of like a loop.
Yeah.
Where the two individuals genuinely want what's best for both. And I think that things are changing so much now at lightning speed, because compared to our parents' generation, relationships leading to marriage isn't about survival anymore, and it isn't about only finances, right? Because in the past, at least the culture that I come from, a woman had to be married to have a family or even to have a roof over her head.
Mm-hmm.
So today it's different, because today we are talking about individuals who are already living by themselves, who can pay all their bills themselves. So then what we are looking for is true synergism. So it isn't just about survival anymore. So don't you think that has a huge factor to play as well, which is in some ways leading to selfishness in the way we look at relationships? Because even for, say, a gentleman to want to fly to the other side of the world to meet a woman, he's looking at the ROI. He's really looking if it's worth. He's really
true. So true.
Like, is it really worth for me to go meet this woman? And I have had this happen at least twice. I mean, it was obviously involved with family. So first was from the UK, the second was from the US. And when people literally, like, these guys flew over to meet me and family was involved. But in both those instances, it didn't work out. And I think one of the reasons is because when you fly in to meet that person, and if it's still in the honeymoon phase of that relationship, it leads to a vacationship, as they call it. It's not so much a relationship, because you're meeting for a couple of weeks. You're totally in the honeymoon phase. Everything is so romantic and just, you're in a high. So as soon as you go back to your regular lives, things tend to just fade. And that eventually led to breakups. So what do y'all think about that?
I think that is legitimate. I think that long distance connections work when there's a common end goal. That's strictly my opinion. I think that if the goal is to eventually be together in the same vicinity where things can be more normal day-to-day life, then yes. But is the connection, the foundational connection that was created, strong enough to sustain the distance until that agreement is made? If that's the understanding going in, but to think that a relationship can be carried on from different countries long term, what's the end goal? Is the end goal marriage? Is the end goal living in the same city together? I'm going to move to you. You're going to move to me. Otherwise, it's what are we doing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've had to come to terms with over the years is just really owning what I really want, rather than being caught up in what I think I'm supposed to want or what society tells me I should want, and or what I just think I'm supposed to do, which for me, I thought, because generally the way it works here is, if by a certain age you're not married and having kids, then there's something wrong with you. Like, you're supposed to get married, you're supposed to have kids, and because I sort of bought into that, I ended up feeling like this sense of, well, I'm behind. So here's this woman who seems to really love me, and now's my chance. I better do it. That's how I got married. I mean, and I'm oversimplifying it quite a bit. I mean, there was more to it than that, but that's what happened. And then after a divorce, and then relatively quickly getting into another serious relationship that lasted a couple years and was a very painful breakup. I just always had this belief that I'm supposed to be with someone forever. And if that's not happening, then something's wrong. And at that point, after the divorce and the subsequent relationship not lasting, I won't say failing, because that's not what my experience was. It just didn't last. I started to think, well, and for me, I'm a pretty spiritual guy. It's like, well, maybe that's not what God wants for me. Maybe I'm supposed to have a succession of 3 to 5 year relationships for the rest of my, and maybe that's okay. And what do I really want? What do I really want? And then it became, okay, well, right now I just want to date. I just want to date, and I want I want to have fun and enjoy my life, and I want to be invested in my career. And I want to find somebody who can deal with that. And if I do, then, you know, we can date, exclusively. But, and then working my way towards, okay, now I want to be deeply invested in a relationship and feel deeply connected to another human being. And that's where I'm at in my life. And understanding that we don't have to be one way or the other, and our wants and needs can change, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we don't owe anyone an explanation. And maybe I just want a vacationship. Maybe that would be great to have some of those for the next few years. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, if that's what I want.
Say that.
I'm speaking hypothetically here, Dr. Dina.
No, that's great that you can say that out loud, that maybe that's what you need, because sometimes we just hold back from saying things because we don't want to be perceived a certain way, or we don't want to be judged a certain way. And as you said, like growing up, we've been told this is how it's supposed to be. And some of us evolved and grew out of those molds of the supposed to be in quotes. So this is great. It's really interesting how we are giving ourselves permission to want different things, to even what we thought we were supposed to have by a certain age. So that's interesting.
You know, for me, where I find myself as a result of all this is that it's funny. I just moved back to my hometown where all my siblings are, and they're all tethered, most of them, in long-term relationships. And my family, there's generally, especially from my mom, God rest her soul, was, I know someday you'll be with somebody and be happy, and, you know, and I don't hear that as much from my siblings, but I'm waiting for it. I've only been here for a month, right? But I'm already happy. Like, I don't need to be in some particular kind of relationship to be happy. I might be more happy with somebody else, but I'm not going to be in a relationship unless I am going to be more happy, right? I'm not, I don't need that. And for the first time in my life, really, since I started this podcast and the people who I've met over the last, it's 3 years, this podcast has been going on. But I have met so many great women over the last few years who, you know, several of them, like, we are slowly getting to know each other over time, which I was never able to do before, you know, and I'm at a place where, you know what, this is great getting to know this person. And if something comes of it someday when the timing is right, fantastic. But it's okay if it doesn't too. But the result of it all is I feel more hopeful about a long-term sustained relationship, the kind that I actually want, than I ever have in my life. Like, I know it'll happen. Right? So it's a good feeling. So, well, Dr. Dina, I love that you came up. Anything else you want to talk about before we shut this thing down? We've been going for a long time.
Talk forever.
It's been amazing. I think it's almost like what I needed, because things have been so stressful. Like right now in Sri Lanka, things have been pretty crazy. But conversations like this really give me hope, because sometimes you just get fed up when you've been on a path and you think you're doing everything right, but why does it look like luck is not on your side? And then you start asking your own self, like, you question your own standards, and you're made to believe if you've got very high standards. And I think in a way for some of us, it's more challenging because we're just honest and we wouldn't want to settle for something that's not close to the quality and standards of the kind of relationship we're looking for. So my question even to Jill right now is, what kind of state is the healthiest to be in? Because even with my therapist, what she says is that you can always be content being single and still be open to meeting the right person. But even when we stay open to meeting the right person, there's almost a little bit of despair that comes with, why isn't it happening any sooner? Or it can get frustrating, right? It can get frustrating. And every time we put ourselves out there, when we have like a bitter experience and it's like, ugh, not again, when it's a not so great experience, it's almost like traumatizing every single time. And then every single time that happens, it feels like, oh, I need to go heal again. And it keeps like, it feels like there's this lagging of inertia happening. So what advice do you have to those who put themselves out, but each time when you don't feel as great as you expect yourself to be? Like, what is the most healthiest state of being for those who are waiting to meet the spiritual, holistic kind of partner?
I love this question. I think the best place to be is one of compassion for yourself and what you're feeling, and know that sometimes it feels fun and sometimes it feels heavy and discouraging, and just be, in allowance to those feelings, allow them to move through, rather than staying in a place of, this is never going to happen for me, because our subconscious minds are so very powerful. And if you believe that nothing's ever going to work out and no one good is out there, and this is what love looks like, then yes, then that will be your experience. I have resolved to let every person I meet, because I'm single right now as well, and do absolutely desire a deep, intimate connection, partnership, all of that. I have resolved to allow every interaction that I have teach me something about myself. And sometimes what it teaches me is just about, I always use this analogy. Sometimes what I learn after going on a date is that I don't ever want to wear those shoes again because they hurt my feet. And that sounds ridiculous, but it's to go and say, I'm here for me. I'm here to discover something about myself. And I find every person I interact with, I try to find something I really loved about them. And so that keeps me in a more positive frame. But knowing that I play this little game with myself, because I do use online dating, because I'm not go out in public by myself. I'm more introverted, and I tend to enjoy staying at home. When I do get out or go on an online dating connection with someone, I just, I lost my train of thought where I was going with that. I allow myself to do that. And I try to move those things along and date more than one person at a time, so that I don't get attached to someone who may not be good for me. But to stay in a healthy frame, if it feels fun, then I do it. And when it stops feeling fun, then I'll back away for a little while, maybe take a little break. And I'm also very tuned into what feels scary and what doesn't. Because if the more comfortable thing for me is to stay at home on the couch when I've been invited out, I know I need to go out. And if going out feels more comfortable than being alone, then I will choose to be alone. Because I find that the greatest growth for me and the greatest sense of adventure is in doing what terrifies me. That makes sense. So that was a long answer to your question of, the healthiest place to be is in a constant state of compassion for what you're experiencing. And sometimes it's going to feel fun and sometimes it's not.
Wow, I can totally relate to not wearing that shoes again.
It sounds silly, but and sometimes you just go out
No,
and you're like, wow,
it's good.
That guy asked really great questions. I really love that about him, or his eyes were sparkly. And you're like, rather than focus on whatever, I try to move from every situation.
Jill, doesn't it sometimes, let's just get, I'm going to get off my chest now. Doesn't it sometimes feel so unfair that we have to be learning lessons on all these multiple first bad days? Not bad, but, lesson days. Whereas you also know somebody who met the love of their life and then he or she was the one. And right now they're just building a life together. Whereas for us, it just seems to be taking so long. So I'm just genuinely getting it off my chest with how time consuming it can feel to have to pick different lessons from different lesson games.
Yeah.
Well,
I will tell you this, Dr. Dina, some of us have been called into this world to become masters at things, and some of us are just here to participate. So I think that folks like all three of us here on this interview, on this podcast today, are just, we're the kind of people that are being called to master this relationship stuff so that we can in turn teach and give the knowledge out. And it's like when I do finally attract the love of my life, it is going to be so deep and so real and so meaningful that I just stay focused on that. But yes, it does feel unfair.
I know for me, this is one of the areas of my life, and there are other areas of my life where at times I go to this place of, why does this have to be so hard for me when it seems to be so easy for other people?
Yes.
And,
exactly.
The first thing I thought, Dr. Dina, when I heard you pose that question is, comparison is just a recipe for disappointment. And I'm sure there are plenty of people in your life who've had an easier path with this than you have. But I also know it's highly probable that you have a lot of gifts that they don't. And your path is just different, And that for me, that's where the self-compassion had to at some point come in, First of all, give myself permission to experience that disappointment. But also, I don't have to be like somebody else. It's okay that the way my picture looks isn't the way my brother's picture looks, or all my sisters or whatever. It's, that whole framework of comparing ourselves to somebody else and my insides to someone else's outsides. It's just not real,
Yep.
So,
Amen.
and Dr. Dina, we got to get you on this podcast. I mean, we've talked about it.
Yes, it's long overdue.
Yeah, and I miss talking to you.
Time, Tom.
Yeah. If I send you a link, will you schedule something with me?
Yes, absolutely.
You hear me? I'm pinning you down.
Do it.
Do it. No, this has been fun. Thank you for coming, and thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
Especially, just coming in at the end of our conversation. I really appreciate that you jumped on up and took part in it. It's been great. All right, there you go. Another episode in the books. Thanks for listening. You can learn more about the show and this episode's guest at thepathtooauthenticity.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Every little bit helps. I want to thank the band Punk Rock Opera, whose music you hear throughout the show. Their songs are used with permission from the artist and under a Creative Commons license. If you're so inclined, check out the Patreon community. As soon as I do these interviews, I upload them to Patreon, where the content is only available to patrons. And for just a couple bucks a month, I usually post audio content, their exclusive audio content, probably 8 times a month, if not more. And as these new episodes are released, as soon as they're done, they're available to patrons. So sometimes that might be 2 weeks before an episode is released, or even longer. Usually it's a few days. Anyway, if you want to support the show, that's a great way to do it. So thanks again for investing your time. It's a big deal to me. Thank you for supporting me and supporting the show. I hope you keep coming back. Be nice.
That's our story. I hope you enjoyed the punk rock opera. We have one last piece of music for you. It goes like this.
Okay, go.
You cannot make us. We are the Jedi Man. We're just the losers that lived up the street, living on these chords, simple beats. You wanna cheat, you wanna stop, you wanna tear us down. We are the bad plans, man. We got our roots stuck in the ground.
Musical generation, self-made bands. We cut our teeth with bloody hands. The rage has instilled in us. Can feed a crowd, give them a rush.
Thank you. And good night.